Let's speak now with Eyre, a distinguished diplomatic fellow at the Middle East Institute. Thank you so much for joining us, Alan. So I just want to start with your reaction to J.D. Vance's blunt warning to Israeli critics of the agreement. And how do you think that message will be received in Israel?
Poorly, at least by Bibi Netanyahu. He's between a rock and a hard place. He convinced President Trump to go to war. And now the strategic interests of the United States and Israel are bifurcating. Israel wants to continue the war against Iran and against Hezbollah, and President Trump just wants to stop it, pull out, declare victory. So there's some serious tension.
Alan, so the most charitable response in Israel, according to reports to this deal, is stony silence. Is it really true that Israel is the worst off among the three major parties? I was reading the New York Times, and they were quoting one analyst in Israel, Nir Dvori, as calling it a diplomatic October 7th.
Well, I wouldn't go that far, but it's clear that both the United States and Israel have failed in their strategic objectives for this war, despite collectively having massive military superiority over the war. Israel was trying to topple the Islamic Republic of Iran. The U.S. seemed to be going along with that, or at least trying to eradicate the nuclear program. They've both failed. Iran's strategic goal was to survive without capitulating on its red lines vis-a-vis the United States. And in that, it's succeeded. Plus, it's discovered a new form of deterrence, which is control of the Strait of Hormuz. So all in all, Iran seems to be the net winner, at least in terms of the war.
Iran's Supreme Leader, meantime, Mujtaba Khamenei, has commented on the MOU for the first time. He said he holds a different view, but was persuaded by Masoud Pezeshkian. So he's deferred to the president. I mean, what's that saying to you in terms, I guess, of the leadership structure, but also the place Iran is in right now?
He's not deferring to the president. I've been watching Iran for 40 years. This is exactly the same thing his dad did, the late Ayatollah Khamenei. If someone else takes initiative, Khamenei, both father and son, want to have some sort of distance in case it goes badly. So what he's saying is, you go ahead, everyone else, and try to do a peace deal with the United States. But if it goes pear-shaped, you can look back on my speech today and see where I said I told you so. So this is typical behavior from the Supreme Leader's office, where they're trying to create a buffer so they don't get blamed for things going badly if they go badly.
Alan, we know that you were part of the U.S. team on the 2015 JCPOA, which took 2 years plus to negotiate. Will 60 days be enough to hammer out all the tough issues? And if they fail to produce a nuclear agreement, what's next?
Yeah, no, 60 days won't be enough. Not even close. 120 days might not be enough. And to be honest, I have real doubts that this U.S. administration has the inclination or perhaps even the ability to negotiate a nuclear deal with Iran that will put Iran's nuclear program back in a box and close its paths to weaponization. So what we could see is a sort of neither war, neither peace situation, just keep going on as the world moves on to something else. It's clear that what President Trump wanted to do with this MOU was not solve the nuclear issue, but just get the Strait of Hormuz back open, because he is, as he himself said, every day it stayed closed, economic consequences were compounding.
Okay, so that bit appears to be working to some degree. There are independent reports, saying that some ships have turned on their transponders once again. I'm curious, though, J.D. Vance also talking about side deals that were made with Iran. I mean, what exactly are these side deals? Do they sit inside or outside the 14-point memo? And is this common, in the 40 years that you were in the Foreign Service?
Well, first of all, I don't think the Strait of Hormuz being open is working. It's under Iranian control, and we've got a long way to go till we're back to the maritime volumes that existed before the war, if it ever. So again, 100 to 130 ships a day going in and out, we're not even close to that. And it will take at least months to get back to that volume. But you're quite right. The U.S. administration is concerned because if you just read the text of the MOU, it looks like the U.S. gave away everything and got nothing. So what they're messaging or what they're spinning is that, well, perhaps the written document isn't that good, but we have all these verbal agreements with Iran that they didn't want to put in the document. So don't worry. I, for one, don't believe that.
Specifically on the nuclear issue, one of the biggest debates surrounding the JCPOA was verification and enforcement. I wonder, how should negotiators guard against that risk that Iran accepts economic benefits while preserving its long-term strategic options? What would your advice be for the U.S. negotiators?
Well, actually, the biggest complaint against the JCPOA was that there were sunset clauses and they didn't go indefinitely. The verification in the JCPOA was probably the spinal cord, the best part, the tentpole, because IAEA, rigorous IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency verification is the essence of any agreement, okay? Because it doesn't matter what Iran says. What matters is what you can verify. And that requires regular, intrusive, unannounced verification inspections. In terms of what Iran is willing to do, it's the same as it's ever been. They're not willing to give up enrichment, but they might suspend it. They're not going to give the U.S. all of its 440 kilograms of highly enriched uranium, but they might downblend it. So we haven't been able to get any additional concessions out of Iran, despite 100 days of intense bombing.
And Alan, I'm just wondering how achievable is this whole idea of not having a sunset clause in any sort of agreement that is reached, you know? A permanent, I guess, agreement by Iran to never, ever produce a nuclear weapon. Is that something that is going to happen in reality?
Well, first of all, please realize that Iran is a member of the non-proliferation treaty and as such has already sworn it will never have a nuclear weapon because that's an essential requirement for all NPT members who don't have nuclear weapons, who have nuclear energy. So Iran not having a nuclear weapon is the bedrock of its international obligations under the NPT. But again, verbal or even written declarations are irrelevant. What matters is verification. In the longer run, Iran won't try for a nuclear weapon if it feels it's not in its interest to do so. And that's one of the problems with this war. Because we attacked Iran twice in the last year, because we've installed a new, harder core, more militarized, more radical IRGC leadership in Iran, the current Iranian regime is more likely to try to actually build a nuclear weapon, something that they weren't doing before the war.
Okay, so looking beyond Iran, Alan, what lessons do you think other nuclear-armed countries like North Korea would learn from this conflict and agreement that followed?
Well, I think all the countries that have nuclear weapons, whether declared or undeclared, are feeling pretty happy because much like Iran is starting to think, no one attacks you if you have a nuclear weapon, or at least not the scale of the attack that was inflicted on Iran by Israel and the United States. So this is very concerning because if, in fact, Iran does try to break out and build a nuclear weapon, then other states in the Persian Gulf, notably Saudi Arabia, might well try to do the same thing. So, you know, the world has neglected the issue of nuclear proliferation and arms control for the last 10 to 15 years. One of the consequences of this war, I hope, is that people start paying more attention to international law, something that's been wholly neglected in the launching and implementation of this war.
Okay, Alan, we'll have to leave it there for now. But thank you very much for your insight this morning. Alan Eyre, Distinguished Diplomatic Fellow at the Middle East Institute.